really great to have this new initiative at ICC. With that, I'd like to welcome Charlie to make the opening remark and introduce us to the speakers for this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Raj. Always a pleasure to be here. A very good morning, everyone. My name is Shaoli Chaudhuri, and I'm a board member at ICC. Through this youth leadership series, we want to give all of our young viewers a platform to engage with successful professionals who have navigated through their middle and high school successfully, while at the same time cultivating their passion, be it in art, music, sports, sculpture, pottery, or what have you. We all know and understand how challenging it is to balance your academic curriculum with extracurricular pursuits and proving leadership skills. Children are struggling with questions like, what is my passion? Can I make a career out of it? And if I'm really good and I like what I do, is that called leadership? Or do I need to have a title in school to prove I have leadership skills? At the end of our session, you can ask your questions and express your concerns to our speakers today. And you can also connect with them over LinkedIn later on. It is my pleasure and my honor to introduce Purvi Shah and Sagar Arun. And both have had very interesting connections with ICC in the past. I'll tell you a little bit about it. Purvi is an art professor in the California College of Art, and she's the founder and CEO of a very interesting nonprofit called the Kids in Art Foundation. She grew the organization's services from one patient and one sibling in 2008 to almost 2,000 patients and caregivers in 2019. And yes, you heard it right, impacting healthcare through art. Purvi's life experiences and creative roots have taught her that developing an impactful and authentic vision begins with thinking about the world, the future you want to live in. So in talking to Purvi, I learned that her parents were very disappointed in her when she was growing up. Why? Because she had C's and D's in all of her subjects in her semester report cards and A's only in art. And Purvi used to be elated with that one grade, to the misery of her parents. I'm sure all of you face that. You know, you wonder why your parents are so excited about your grade in STEM and they are not at all elated about your grade in art. Now, Purvi took this passion and turned it into an amazing profession that she's going to talk to you, all of you about. And a little bit about Purvi's connection with ICC. Her parents have taken advantage of ICC senior program every time they have visited the United States. Thank you, Purvi, for being here today. Sagar earned his Bachelor of Arts from the Ringling College of Arts and Design in 2018. And since then, he's had an extremely fun and interesting work experience as an animator with Disney, Sony, Jellyfish Pictures, and now he's with a startup called Spire Animation Studios. Sagar learned table tennis at ICC when he was in middle and high school, and that's where I met him. I remember being blown away when his dad showed me his anime sketches. We were all waiting for our kids to finish their table tennis practice. And it was interesting because I told his dad at that point, is Sagar going to be an anime professional when he grows up? And his dad was like, I really don't know. At this point, we are figuring out if he can do computer science or something else. And Sagar stuck to his passion for anime. He won a scholarship to go to Japan and pursue a career in animation. He's animated some delightful table tennis shots in a recent movie called Over the Moon. You must watch it on Netflix if you can. So Sagar comes to us from his table tennis passion with ICC. And now I turn it over to Paras Malhotra. She's also another board member at ICC, very engaged with our young audience, such as yourself. And Paras is going to now lead us through the very interesting conversation that we're going to hear ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Shali. I'm so excited to be here this morning with our wonderful guests, Arun and Purvi. I know they have great stories and journeys that they want to share with our youth today. So I'd love to get started perhaps with Arun on kind of going back in time, right? I want to hear about your experiences middle school, high school. When did you get actually interested in animation and arts? Maybe we can get started there. Love to hear if, which school you went to and what your experience has been in middle school and high school.
So hi everyone, I'm Sagar. I am so in high school and middle school, I was drawing all the time. I was drawing in classes, and I kind of I just really liked drawing, but I didn't know I wanted to be. I didn't know I wanted it for a career because I didn't know it was possible. So it was like one of those things where you don't really think about it, even though you're like, oh, like I'm really interested in this. But I kind of just kept doing it on the side, and I didn't really take classes until my senior year of high school, which was like AP art, and that was just to kind of just get like an AP class out of the way. But when so my mom knew someone at Electronic Arts at the time, and she connected me with him, and he kind of took me on a tour of the campus, and then I saw like really high-end computers and like Cintiqs, like tablets that you can draw on, and like PS3s and Wii's and everything on like developers' desks and like artists' desks, just for them to like test and everything. And I was like, I didn't know this was like a thing that you could do. And then from then on, I started becoming really interested in it. I went to Mission San Jose High School, which is known for like their academics, basically. So it was kind of like I was kind of fighting like a tide going against me, because everybody was like, oh, I want to go to Berkeley, I want to go to Stanford, all this stuff. And it was really helpful kind of like seeing someone from the industry explain what they're doing to me and like explain animation, and yeah, then it kind of just took off from there. And then I went to Ringling, but yeah, I think that answers the question for now.
Yeah, no, that's awesome that you were open to exploring, and you met this person who helped you kind of explore a bit more and introduce you to this field, and you figured out it's not only arts, there's computers involved, science involved, and you kind of found your passion there. So that's awesome.
Yep.
So same question with Purvi. So hi, Purvi. I know you have been interested in arts, as Shauli mentioned, with some resistance from your family and parents. So walk us through your middle school and high school and what your experience was as you were exploring arts, and how did you work through with your family and really kind of got interested in arts.
Hi, thank you for having me. I would say it wasn't so much that my parents were shocked. One thing I have to say is I'm the youngest of six children, which means by the time I came along, I could do anything and they wouldn't care, right? But having said that, I don't think art was such a big thing. I grew up in India and I went to high school and middle school in India. And if you weren't a good student, you weren't anything. You were measured as, how good you were in your studies. So since I wasn't a good student, I wasn't in the forefront of any conversations. That's how life was growing up. And for me, art did it. So it didn't matter if I wasn't in the forefront. For me, my art was my safe space. And I think my parents saw that and they realized that, I was thriving when I was doing that. And it really made me happy, and they went with it, I think, for the longest time, just to see how long is she really going to survive doing that. Not as much as there's a plan, but okay, if that's keeping her happy and her out of trouble, let's let her keep doing it. So that's really how art became sort of my safety zone, my safety net. And for me, I also realized that I had something that everyone else didn't. Everyone, as Sagar mentioned, only talked about education or, about grades. For me, I could draw, I could make something, and I was suddenly appreciated. And I realized that's my internal weapon that I could use when, I was showing my failing grades. I could show this amazing piece of art that nobody could make. So that's really what I remember from my childhood, frankly speaking.
No, that's amazing that you found your passion and your joy in art, and you kind of stick with it and continue focus on that. So that's great, awesome. So, given our audience is middle school and high school students, we had a great last month's session, and a lot of questions came in, to define what does leadership mean, right? How do you find your passion? So I'm going to ask you, when you were, let's say, in high school, what did leadership mean to you? And how did you maybe use your passion? And I know that's also, like you're exploring if arts is where you want to focus, if animation is, where you want to focus. So what did leadership mean to you? And, how did you kind of continue with that as you went to college and beyond? So maybe Purvi, we can start with you.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
I would say that I know leadership is a big term in our life now. For me, growing up, leadership, being a really poor student, wasn't part of my vocabulary at all. There wasn't an opportunity to be a leader if you are not good at your studies. It was as simple as that. So I realized when I was young that you could be a leader of one, because that's what I was. I kept doing what I liked doing, and I felt I wasn't being held back, or life wasn't holding me back. And that's really where I realized, when I look back now, I have many years to look back upon, that you can be a leader of one. You just have to stick to your gun. You have to believe in what you do, and then something will grow out of it. So that's what I would say to all our middle schoolers and high schoolers. You don't have to be on stage and have to be in spelling bee and have to be the best of everything. If you can be a best of what you want to be, for me, that's a leader.
Well, that's amazing, just finding a passion and being the leader. So thank you for sharing that, Purvi. So Arun, what are your thoughts around leadership, and do you have any experiences you can share with us from high school or middle school or even beyond high school?
So I totally agree with Purvi. It's all about kind of taking initiative for doing things yourself. And then I think through that, people will want to be around you because you're confident in yourself, kind of. And that can be a leadership thing in some way also. I don't think it's about being like the president of your high school. I don't think it's about that. There can only be one president of your high school and one vice president, I guess. And, I guess like 4 seats in general. But I think people would be more impressed for you to go the non-conventional route and kind of taking initiative on your own and being a leader there. So in high school, when I was playing table tennis, actually, there was this league called BATTF. And we would just go around to the other clubs and play, and we would have representation and teams from like ICC or another club, and we'd have this tournament. And I wasn't the best player on my team by any means. I was probably the worst one on my team, but they named me leader just because I was like the oldest and kind of like, like the most mature at the time, maybe. So I think it wasn't like being the best. It was like kind of supporting everybody and taking the initiative to make sure everybody's okay, like taken care of, and like if they lost, like how do you deal with that from like losing yourself or lose like someone else losing or a team losing and like reputation. And that was kind of like a specific thing for leadership. But I think like also in college, it's just like being a leader of yourself and like helping people realize like their best potential essentially. So it's like, yes, you're learning, but like you should be learning with everybody around you and kind of like creating a group session where you can be honest and open And I think that is really important in like future leadership roles, like actual leadership roles where you're like a manager, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So, you had the confidence and you were leading with empathy, kind of, showing that care to other players in your league. And that is, also being part of the leader, right? Kind of showing the leadership skills. So I want to stay on this topic and moving on to Purvi, right? So Purvi, from high school, college, forward few years, and now you founded the foundation, Arts and Kids Foundation, and I want to hear your journey as to why you founded the foundation, what led you to that, and then how are you bringing that leadership not only in the foundation but to other families. So can you talk a little bit about your experience there?
Sure. So in 2005, I have two sons, and my younger son was diagnosed with leukemia. And I was a creative director at that time in a multimedia firm in San Francisco. And of course, right away, I became a full-time cancer caregiver. I quit my job. And what we realized was we were spending more time in the hospital than out of the hospital. Or if we would go in just for a routine blood test or a checkup, we might never come home, maybe for 2 days, for a week, or even more, because something is growing or something's happening. And that's where my creativity really came in, because I realized I had no control over anything, no aspect of my child, his treatment or a life. And so I started doing what I knew best. I started doing art with my son, who was the patient, and his older brother, who was 6 at that time. And I did it just to have control. It was selfish. I just needed control over life. And I knew that art brought joy and it made me happy. And as a parent, if I was happy, I could take care of my kids. That's all. I had tunnel vision at that time, that how can I'm a very positive person, and I realized that I didn't have any. So I said, I need to do something that keeps us going, and I don't have control over other things. And that's really how the organization started. I did not know then that it was going to become a nonprofit. I just realized I was seeing the same families in the waiting room at the hospital. The treatment went on from 3 years to 6 years, and that became our family, and they all needed the same distraction. So I started doing art with all the other kids who were in the waiting room. And since my background is as a creative director and graphic designer, and my husband used to work at Pixar at that time, we just knew so many artists that I just brought a lot of artists to work with all the kids. And before I knew, I had started Kids and Art Foundation. And talking about leadership, I again did not know that I was leading. It was really my art, and something that Sagar also said. It's like I was passionate and I was doing something. I did not have an ulterior motive or anything. And I think people were just following what I was sharing, and they really wanted me to keep doing what I was doing. And it became, the artists would keep calling me, the families would keep calling me, and I had only intended to do one workshop, but then it just I realized that I needed to do more. And I think that's what I guess leadership is, that you look at what is in front of you and see if you have the ability, you keep moving forward and find the right people. And that's really what I think, I have to share from this experience. So.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, Purvi, what you have done with arts and bringing joy and to the other families and to the kids, right? And that's definitely leadership in terms of bringing art to them and kind of improving their life with being creative and giving them a venue to participate and kind of get that joy. So your story is very inspiring. Thank you for sharing with us. So moving on to Arun. Arun, I know you've had some experience in Japan. Japan is also my favorite city to visit, and very fascinating culture. So tell us your experience in Japan, and I know you also speak Japanese, right? How did that help you evolve as you were experiencing, the culture? I think you were there for some training. So talk to us about your experience in Japan.
So just as a little backstory, I studied Japanese through high school for 3 years. And then I went through this program called Youth for Understanding, where they would basically place us in a random city with a host family, so you're like completely immersed. And the best thing for me was to go to a place where nobody spoke English, because then you kind of get really immersed and you learn about the culture, and there's no crutches. So when I was there, I was with the host family, and I was kind of just like learning about how they communicated, and it was just really eye-opening because it's so different from the US, and it was just so much more respectful, and like everybody was kind of aware of the consequences, that like any repercussions or consequences of anything that they said. So it was kind of like a teaching moment there, and I played table tennis there too. And before every match, we would bow and like respect our opponent. After every match, we would bow and respect our opponent. And with teamwork there and being a leader, it's in school teams. I wasn't the leader there at all, but it was so much more effort and work to be a leader there, because you are basically in charge of this team and in charge of their well-being. And anyone who's done sports knows that like mental health is huge, or else you can't play. So it's like the leader has to make sure everybody's cheering for someone who's playing, and it's this whole thing where it's almost like a battle of teams and just like willpower. And it was really inspiring to me. And in school, it was completely different. You really respected your teachers, and you wore uniforms, and it was just one of those things where it's just eye-opening, and it's like being on another planet, but a really good planet. So yeah, I thought it was great. I thought it was really eye-opening. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. I mean, having that experience in Japan and speaking Japanese, and I'm kind of seeing this theme, right? You were involved with ICC, with the table tennis program, and that's kind of helped you be a leader, right? You've mentioned quite a few examples about table tennis tournaments and how you're working with your opponents, and kind of leading with empathy. So that is awesome. Though I haven't actually had a chance to see the table tennis center here yet, but I'm so looking forward to seeing that, and maybe getting my kids involved in the table tennis center as well. So thanks for sharing with us.
Of course.
So back to Purvi, right? Purvi, so you are an arts professor. I always kind of hear, at work or with the kids, and everybody's asking them to be creative. Say, you need to be creative, come up with a creative solution or be creative. So as an arts professor, what is the advice that you give to your students? How do they kind of, be creative in the classes that you teach?
So I teach at California College of the Arts. It's in San Francisco, and I teach undergrad user experience design. And it's fascinating. I have students from China. Of course, everything is online right now. So I have students from China, Korea. So we are like connecting from all over the world, India and local, right? So everyone, as Sagar mentioned, everyone comes with their own cultural backgrounds. Everyone comes with different norms. Some people will speak up and some people won't. But design is a universal language that they all speak, which is what I try to get out of most of them. Since we have students, in the audience, I just want to say that design and art are two different things, right? Like you could be an artist, which means you're doing things for yourself. You're not doing it for somebody else. If it pleases you, it's your style. Whereas design, you're doing it for somebody else. So you have to put yourself aside and make sure you have empathy for the user. So that's really what I focus a lot on with my students, that don't fall in love with what you're working on. You have to make sure that it works for whoever it is you're creating it for, because that's what makes it successful. Otherwise, you're just designing for one, and that doesn't make sense. And even that is such a small term, but for them to even think about getting out of their headspace, because we stay in a headspace so much much nowadays is what I think is the biggest message for me. It's like, think outside yourself, not just outside the box, but look at how people are interacting with each other, or even looking at each other, or, consuming things, because even if it doesn't relate to what you're designing now, it will at some point. So I just really ask them to be more present in everything that they do, and that goes with even my reading assignments that I give them. I know that I was a visual person growing up, so I make sure that when they give me their feedback, it has to be in any format that works for them. Again, I want them to be present, that if they've read something that's like 20 pages long, give it to me as sketch notes. It doesn't matter. Write a big essay. I don't care. Put it in bullet points. But I need you to be really there, trying to look at it as, not yourself, but as somebody who's consuming this content. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's
That's super helpful. I mean, being present, the advice that you give, that's amazing, right? If we all can be present in what we are doing and just kind of thinking not only outside the box, that is amazing advice. So thanks for sharing that, Purvi. So Arun, I have the next question for you. So you graduated college and you worked for some big companies, and now you are at startups. So are you living the life here in the Bay Area, working for a startup? Talk us through some of your experiences, working for a bigger studio versus, working for a startup.
Okay. I am actually in LA, not the Bay Area.
Oh, okay.
But I think so. I worked for a few companies, big corporations like Disney, Blizzard, Sony, and it felt very kind of stay in your lane, like that kind of feeling. It was like you're an animator, be an animator, go animate. That's all you're doing, just animate. And it was fine for a bit, it was good. And I learned how to animate really well, Disney animation, they know how to animate. And it was the same thing at Sony. It was even more so at Sony, a little more, that corporate feeling was a little more intense, where it was like, we don't really care about you. We care more about the work you're doing, and you can be replaced probably if needed. And since I just want to preface it by saying the animation industry is a lot of like contract work, where it's like you're hired for a contract for like a year for a movie. It's like being an actor almost without the fame. So it's like you are hired for a movie, and then if they don't have a movie after that, very soon after that, then they're like, okay, come back later. And we're like, okay. But working at like Spire and Blizzard actually was even a smaller team. You felt like you had a little more like opportunity, and you had a little more say in what was going on, and you're able to like do other things other than animation, which I really like, because I did a lot of that in school, where you got to do more things than just animation. You got to be more in charge of what you were doing, and I like that feeling. I think that's probably the biggest difference for me. And the teams are much closer, more tight knit. Like people know each other, people joke around. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. So thanks for sharing. I would probably have the last question for both of you, but starting with Arun. If our students who are listening in today, right, they want to start an animation, what are some of the recommendations that you would have for them? How do they get started? You've met somebody who kind of introduced you to this field. What would you recommend to the students listening today?
I would try to do the same thing that I kind of did, where it's like, you just find like a professional and you just ask them questions about like, hey, like, what's it like? What school do I go to? And you might not get an answer back right away because we're all busy, but everybody's really nice in the industry, and you can ask them questions. There are also like YouTube channels that like explain like, what's it like to be an animator? Like, what are the challenges? What are the great things? Yeah, I would say that I think speaking with someone in the industry, or at least like reaching out to someone who knows someone, because like we're all one step away from each other at most. So it's like I am one step away from someone who knows Bill Gates. So it's like the world is really small in that kind of sense. So you will find someone for sure.
Okay, well, thanks for those recommendations.
I just want to add to what Sagar said, because even with my students, I have to keep telling them, it's like, just ask. People love it when students ask because they see the hunger and the need for learning. This is the best time of your life. Once you have like a paid job, when you ask, it becomes a need of a certain kind. But when you're a student, people love to mentor you. They want to know how to help you get from point A to point B. So don't be shy. If you like something, go and ask someone. There's someone on LinkedIn. Just search for people and you will find them.
So reach out, don't be shy, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. So Purvi, last question for you as well. If the students want to get involved in your foundation, how can they be involved? And then I actually do have another question for you. I know I just said last question. So maybe you can answer that first and then I'll go into my second question.
So of course, like COVID, we are like a COVID 360. Everything we used to do was human to human. All our artists would work with the patients in the waiting room or while they were getting their chemo or bedside, which we cannot do right now, which means everything is online. Something that has happened, because of that is we are hearing from a lot of students, high school students, as well as college students who are working from home, right? And they're all realizing that mental health is an issue and they are reaching out to creativity, which is amazing. Means that is, the best connection COVID has made all of us very creative in our thinking. And from that, we have realized there's a need because we're getting a lot of students who are reaching out to us. So for all the students, if you're listening, if you're interested in creating an amazing art club in your high school or your college, that would be a great way to, set up something where you can talk about how art is healing. And it doesn't have to be that you're an artist. You could be in science or math or economics, but if you can use that, so if they want to set up a club, that's one thing. Someone could definitely come and talk, reach out to me. And then this is also the 10th anniversary of my son's passing, 2021. So we have initiated a legacy campaign. And if any students want to join, all the information is on the website, but I'll be more than happy to talk about, again, everything about how art heals. That's what this year is about for us. So I'll be happy to talk with them.
Okay, awesome. So my last question is more as a parent. So I have two boys and a daughter. And when I heard you last time, Purvi, you had some really great suggestions for parents, right? If we have kids who are not really into the traditional, science or engineering, what suggestions do you have for the parents? How do we work with our kids to encourage them to try different things? What would you suggest as a parent to another parent?
Sure. I would say, of course, right now, our kids are at disservice. They have too many choices. There's just too many options that they can pick from. So that is a disservice, but there is something that your child has done from when they were little to now, whether now they're in middle school or high school. What is that one thing? There has to be some connection. For me, I went through life, but I realized creativity is my connection, right? I found that I was good at, finding something when there's nothing. So I'm sure your children have some traits, help them hone those traits, whatever that is. Even if that's a shy child, there is something they're excelling at. And that's what I always say, that, find what sparks them. They might not be an A student or they might not be an amazing artist, but whatever sparks them, I think that's what we need to look for in our children instead of making them fit a mold, because we need to break those molds.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Thank you, Purvi, and thank you, Arun. We have probably some questions from the audience as well. So Rupal, want to see if we have some audience questions from the audience?
There are some questions in the audience, Paras. And okay. One of the questions is that how did both Purvi and Sagar convince their parents to allow them to pursue art? As we're in the Bay Area, and the focus is STEM. And so this particular person wants to know how were they able to convince their parents. So maybe if Purvi could say, and then Sagar.
So I'm so glad you asked that question, because yes, how about I say it from a parent's perspective as well? Because I have a son who's a senior in college right now. And, growing up, as he was growing up, I was watching that this kid is going to be creative. He uses when he had a science project, he created a Mariana Trench from Legos. When he had another science project, he used, his Hot Wheels to come up. He always used a visual way to do things. So, I was the same. And finding that's what made him happy, and that's where he was finding his leadership and his strength. I think we made him tell us why he should pursue arts. So he's a student at Rhode Island School of Design, and we did not let him just get away with it. We made him tell us why this is really important for him, not so much as to how he's going to make money, as much as why is it important, because if it is important for him, he's going to find a way to make money. And it was fascinating. If we let our kids tell us what it is that excites them or brings spark, they will surprise us. So I may not have answered your question as you asked me, but I am talking as a parent who saw a child going through this, figuring out how is this person going to survive in life if he wants to do art. Me as an art person had to also ask him to convince us. And we're really glad we let him do that. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Sagar, what about you?
Make them watch Three Idiots, I guess. I'm just joking. But my dad did actually watch Three Idiots because he was convinced, oh no, Sagar has to do computer science. And he watched Three Idiots and he was like, no, he has to do whatever he wants. But the message of the movie is to follow your passion and not go with, what your flow is. And I know kids, not what your flow is, sorry, not to go with the general flow of whatever everybody else is doing. But I think you just have to make, like Purvi said, a really convincing argument of look, here are statistics, here's how much I'm earning, here's how I'm going to survive, here's what jobs I can get, here's where I can live. And I don't think it's just Indian parents, because a lot of parents are, concerned about can you survive with this? But I think if you just make arguments and work hard and show them you're working hard, I think it'll be okay.
I'm so glad you mentioned Three Idiots. I just want to add to that. So I have an engineer husband and I'm an art major, right? So of course we had the computer science and art conversations a lot, and I'm sure happens in every household, especially right now when we're in the Bay Area, so everything is STEM. So everyone feels like get your computer science degree and then go do whatever, right? I don't think there's just one way out. So, but for those kids, they have to be, they have whatever it is, whether it's art or whether it is, any kind of animation. I'm sure, Sagar, you've spent many hours trying to perfect what you're doing. So it's really that. It's if you so want to do that, make sure you are honing that skill, because it will show. And I think you can convince your parents when you show that. So
that's really great. Thank you so much, Purvi and Sagar. One person had said that it's
Sorry,
okay if you...
I just wanted to add one more thing.
Yes, please do.
I know parents don't like listening to their kids. So get someone else to tell your parents that it's going to be okay. Because I think my parents sought out a college counselor, and the college counselor kind of told them hey, this is something he can do to live, and sometimes your parents don't want to listen to you, but I think them listening to another adult will help.
Awesome.
Yeah. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's perfect. One board member I know had said that it's okay if you want to be the whatever profession you choose, you just have to be the best in it. So, and that's what I think you were doing. Are you happy with your choice of art and animation as a profession? Sagar, you first, and then I'd love to ask Purvi.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. You know, like as a kid, I would always get like action figures of like Spider-Man or Superman or whatever. And I would always like, you know, make them fight like kids do. And animation is just that on a computer. Um, and you're getting paid for it. Like, you know, you're just getting paid to do art and animation and stuff that you really like. And then there are hard times, you know, but when you look like next to you at like your friend who's like just looking at code all day, it's just like, okay, I'm so glad I'm doing this, you know, and I don't want to be doing that. So yeah, I'm happy with it.
Wonderful. Purvi, what about you?
I've been doing it since I remember holding a pen or a pencil. So, yes, I am happy. I would say it takes many different shapes. It doesn't stay the same, means over the years, you will end up using your art, your creativity, your design background, or whatever that creative spark that you started with, you will change it, or it will evolve over time, and it could become something like creative leadership. But yes, whatever it is, whether it's creating the art or expanding the mission of the organization, I think the creativity just keeps you going. So I am happy doing what I'm doing.
Wonderful. Thank you. Asif, I know you had a question. Why don't you ask?
Yeah, there are a couple of questions that I can see in this. So starting with the first one, probably this is for Purvi because Sagar is very, very young. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Be yourself, don't let people tell you you're not good enough.
No, that's a good one. Yeah. Actually, I, as a parent, have this question, because I have an eighth grader, and what I was thinking about was that how do I encourage him to try out different things, right? I mean, he hasn't yet honed in one, and it's not like, okay, I'm pushing him to be a software engineer because that is what I am, versus him already having figured out. Probably in your case, it was very apparent to your parents, right? And in Sagar's case as well. So as a parent, what advice would you give? How do we encourage the kid to just say, hey, try out various different things, and nothing is sticking or standing out at this time. So as a worried parent, what is your advice?
Take them to a museum.
Okay.
That will change their mind. I
Perfect.
would say that by far, if you ask my son, he's not here right now. Of course, he's in college. I think his memories of growing up are every place we would go to, we would go to a museum, because it's what you see on the wall suddenly makes you feel like you can do that, and people come to watch this, or suddenly you ask these questions because you see all these people and you see all this art, and the space of a museum is just liberating. It brings about questions about science, math, art, colors. It's conversations you'll take home and you'll be like, I didn't know my child could think this way. So I highly recommend museums to add that as part of your life.
Thank you for that advice. Sagar, same question to you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Just like, because I think museums are such a great way to just introduce them to everything, and they'll kind of like be like, oh, that's so cool, but then they'll forget about it because it's a museum. But like, I think then it might be up to you to be like, oh, like he really liked that one thing and he was asking questions. Maybe like I'll suggest like classes or something else. And in eighth grade, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, I was drawing, but like I don't think my parents were just like, oh, he's just drawing, like. So I think maybe like there are things that he's doing that maybe like like he's brushed off and you've brushed off, that like maybe you can like revisit.
Makes sense. Thanks for that advice. Actually, we do have another question from the audience. What obstacles did both of you had to overcome to achieve? I think the question is probably about some of the challenges as you were sort of figuring your way out in your profession of choice or whatever you chose to do in your life. So Sagar, starting with you.
So I think the biggest obstacle for for me as an animator going through school was competition, because everybody wants to go to Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks. And the reality is that everybody isn't going to go to Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, you know? And it's kind of coming to terms with that obsession is really unhealthy, of, you know, like wanting to go to like these 3 places out of like the other places that might actually make you happy, you know? And kind of not getting that mental space of, oh, I have to do this. This is what I'm meant for. I need to do this or else I'm a failure. I think that is really unhealthy. And that's been a big challenge for me and my friends. The other thing is since it is a very competitive field, like how do I get a job in that competitive field? I think that's another obstacle. And I think people try to do what companies want to see, but companies already have people that do what the companies want. So I think the companies want to see portfolios or reels or resumes of someone who has their own voice and has their own take on the world, kind of, and like culture. So when I was applying for couple of studios, I had a thing on an animation on my reel that I made about like Bollywood, and it was funny and it was super it was super cultural and specific to like who I am as a person. So I think they kind of latched onto that, and I think that was a way I kind of overcame that kind of obstacle, you know, kind of being like seeing yourself as a person, who you are, and kind of bringing that into your work. So
no, that's a good point. Actually, just, I mean, would it be fair to say that more so, again, being an engineer, right? I mean, when you are in the field of creativity, would it be right to say that just sort of follow your heart rather than jumping from one rat race to another, right? Because I can tell you about the rat race that we are in, more so in the Silicon Valley, right? I mean, being a technologist and stuff. So would it be the fair way to summarize what you just said? Just let your heart lead you, more so if you have chosen a field of creativity?
Definitely. I mean, I do think it's like a balance, you know, like your heart can lead you somewhere, but like your mind has to like be like, is this realistic? Is the scope of this, you know, like I would say it's a balance. But I would definitely say just look into yourself and just do what you feel like you want to do. Mm-hmm. And I think, yeah, that basically summarizes. Yeah, I think that summarizes it.
Purvi, your perspective?
So what kind of obstacles? Well, when I decided I wanted to pursue, graphic design, it suddenly became like, oh, she's a girl, she's going to design, it's okay, she's not going to make much money. That was the thinking at that time, right? Mm-hmm. So it's okay, let her do the arts, that's fine. That was the obstacle I had to fight against, because I wasn't getting into this because I didn't want to do anything, or I wanted to do more about this, right? So I had to constantly make it evident that what I'm doing is of value. So that was an obstacle that I had to constantly fight. But what's amazing, I would say, the dichotomy, or what I see in my nonprofit, because it's an arts-led nonprofit in Silicon Valley, I have to do it all over again. I'm fighting that same battle in Silicon Valley, trying to find funding or getting people to convince that art is a must, not a nice to have. So I'm doing that on a day-to-day basis all over again. So
no, that's very interesting. We don't have any other questions, so I'll slide in one more from my side. So being in Silicon Valley, and again, working for various different technology companies, and then hearing about them, you have this whole thing, data is the new oil, right? So all the decisions are data driven. I think both of you understand where I'm going with this question, right? How do you balance that? I mean, there is this big discussion about Google as an example, making all the creativity related decisions, right? I mean, you talked about user experience, user interfaces and all that, all data driven, right? A/B testing, you know. Mm-hmm. I would love to get both of your thoughts on this, starting with you, Purvi, right? How do you balance it. It's like you have spent a lot of time trying to come up with something from a user experience point of view, right? I mean, from something that you think is creative. And then there is this data, of course, however it is gathered of the users and such, that is sort of making the decision. And I've read about people, there was a famous designer, I forget his name, from Google, he quit and he went to Facebook, so on and so forth, right? So any thoughts on that?
So in the creative field, data is not numbers, or it's not alphabets, right? It's a different kind of machinery. So convincing people to understand that qualitative, not quantitative data is really hard. That is true, because it's an emotional appeal you're making towards data. That yes, so many percent of people felt better after doing the art, but you're not curing the kids, right? You're just making them feel better. That is the data. Is that data convincing? Maybe not, but that is the data. So there is a constant battle when it comes to creativity, because it's all about feelings. It's about how you're making one person feel better rather than changing the entire world and showing the numbers. So it is a struggle. I wouldn't say anybody has found an answer to it. The way we do it is by constantly showing it in the art form as to how something is getting better, how someone is making an impact. But numbers wise, it is a losing game yet.
Yeah. So it's not a binary, right? It's like, oh, somebody liked it or somebody disliked it.
Absolutely.
You're basically trying to map it over a grayscale. Sagar, your thoughts?
I think I would relate this to kind of movie making, because I think like a lot of companies, when they make movies, they go over data and they go over like what the audience wants to see, like what tropes does the audience want to see. And the thing is when they make those kind of movies based on data, it's so derivative and people usually don't like them. And they're like, why isn't this movie original? Why isn't this movie doing anything new? It's because like they just, it's a computer making the movie essentially. So there's nothing human about it, and they can't resonate with it. They can't like connect with it on a personal level. So I think that sometimes data can be a guideline, but I think that like creativity and a human touch is always needed when you're making like a big decision, because I think people need to relate to whatever the product is, I think. And like, yeah.
And we are not quite there with respect to the machines being able to.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe I just want to add to what your question and what Sagar said and what I said. It's like, I think we might have to just have a different way of thinking about data when it comes to creativity. Again, let's not put it in a box. Let's see if there's another way to think about, how do you measure creativity? So I'll put that out as a challenge for all of you out there who are thinking about data. Come help us, all creative people.
No, that makes perfect sense. Actually, one more question popped up. Rupal, if I can
yes, please
pose that question. Are you always recognized and get credit when you do something? If not, how do you deal with this? Purvi, sorry. Go ahead, please.
That's a hard one. That's a hard one, because recognition is not why I started the organization. So that is really not at the forefront of what I'm doing. It comes by seeing more, families and volunteers and artists join us. But for me, I don't think it's recognition that I am looking for.
Got it. Sagar, how do you deal with that? Especially when you enter the workforce with all of these dreams, and then you think that you have given your best. And relatively speaking, also when you see your peers working alongside, and you, at least in your perspective or your mind, you're better than them, right? I mean, and what if you don't get the recognition?
I think if everyone did things to get recognition, then the world would have burned down a long time ago.
For your age,
I think that it's like, I think, like if you're doing something, do it because you want to do it and not because you want recognition. And I think that self-fulfillment is basically self-recognition. And getting credit isn't like, to get credit, you have to give credit, right? So it's like there's no one man thing usually. Like movie making for me or animating, it's like always like there's like layers. There's so many people working on it. So it's like if someone's like, oh, you did that awesome shot, that's so cool. It's your duty to be like, oh yeah, thanks so much. But there are tons of other people that also, you know, helped me, and it's not just my product, it's everybody's product. So it's like, I don't think it's a healthy mindset to be like, I want recognition for this one thing because I did it. I would say that.
That makes a lot of sense. So with that, I think we are done with all the questions. Those are.
I have one more question, Asif. So Rashri wanted to know, where can you get art internships? Purvi, if you could shed some light on that, and Sagar, if there are any that you did, if you could let us know, please.
So I'll let Sagar talk first. He's closest to the age of all the kids that are listening. So go for it, Sagar.
So art internships at like the bigger companies in high school and middle school are like, they're not found a lot. There are mostly like mentorships, maybe. But in college, you will hear of all of them, like at Disney, at Pixar, at like other companies. There are always internships that they post. And it's the way to get them is, you know, like getting them is also very competitive. And the way to get them is like, you know, what I was talking about before, like standing out and stuff. But I don't think, I know a lot of parents think that like, oh, if you don't get an internship, you're gonna fail. Like you're terrible. But that's not the way to think about it. I think the way to think about it is like, if you get an internship, great. That's awesome, but not everybody's gonna get an internship. So like, an internship is there to like make you better. So if you take the summer and take a class, that'll get you the same experience and the same learning potential as an internship, then you're doing the same thing. So like, you're just spending money instead of receiving, which is okay as a student. But I would just, I wouldn't put so much, you know, like emphasis on an internship. If you can get it, great. If you can't, then keep learning. I think that's the most important thing, because like I've been at studios and in real review or like candidate reviews where it's like they'd rather see someone who has improved rather than someone who has a bunch of work experience and stayed the same. So I guess, I hope I answered that question. If not, please feel free to ask another question about it.
No, that's great.
I'm really glad I let him speak first, because that's exactly, I'm glad I got to hear what I was hoping he would say too. So, but it's true. It's like internships. I know we as parents put too much pressure on our kids, if I may say so as a parent, that every summer they have to have an internship. I think we need to go back to like, let them just be themselves and this is the time to hone that skill that we've been talking about, find who they really are and learn, as Asif was saying, find out about other things that they are not learning about, take that time to figure out the other aspects, bring that balance of the left brain and right brain. And when you come to college, yes, those internships will show up. And if they are not available, just keep doing what you like doing. Make your portfolio better, because that will get you the job. Just doing any random internship is not going to do it. That's not what they're looking for. If your skill is really crafted, they are going to see that. So
it could actually be worse for you. Yep. Getting an internship that doesn't matter, because it's like you're not learning at that point. You're kind of just doing a job for money, and that's not what people are looking for. They're looking for good work, and you might not necessarily be doing good work at that place. So, I mean, there was an example, if you want quantitative data, there's an example of my my friend who did an internship kind of like that, where it was like not really helpful to him, and I took a class instead. And I ended up getting an internship the next year because of that. My girlfriend didn't do an internship at all, and now she's earning more than me. So.
Thank you so much, Sagar and Purvi. I'm going to request Paras to now wrap up the program. So Paras, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sagar and Purvi, for such a wonderful discussion and sharing your advice and perspective with the audience. Really appreciate your time today. My three key takeaways from this discussion is: one, follow your passion. Whatever your passion is, follow it. If your parents don't agree, convince them. Find people who are supportive of you and do what you like to do and be the unique you that you are. The second is have the courage and conviction to navigate through setbacks. Purvi, such a strong story and journey, what you've done with the foundation. Thank you for sharing that with us as well. And then lastly, create your own path, right? I think both of you talked about reaching out to others to learn more. Don't be shy, reach out. We are all here to support you. So if you have any other questions or need more information or talk to somebody, please do reach out to us or to people through LinkedIn and social media these days. I think that is great advice as well. So again, thank you, Purvi and Sagar, for joining us. Next series in the Youth Leadership Program, which is scheduled for March 21st from 11 to noon. I'm hoping you all can join us then as well. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Prachi Kale to talk about the Wellness Youth Program.
Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you so much to the panelists for that discussion. I think it was really, really helpful to people of all ages. And thank you to ICC for hosting this event. So I'm Prachi. I am the Community Engagement Manager for the CWC Youth Program. So ICC Crack the Wellness Code launched the Youth Forum last year. We had more than 20 sessions with 35 instructors, doctors, people from all sorts of fields reaching out to a lot of youth to talk about wellness of the mind, wellness of the body, how to maintain that, how to improve that, and provide that community. So if that's something that you're passionate about, like our panelists talked about, finding your passion, then we actually have our second event of the year next weekend, February 28th from 10 to 11:30 a.m. So I'll put the registration link for that in the chat box if anybody's interested. And this session will be focused on heart health. So it'll be a collaboration between CWC and Jiva Clinic. So we'll talk about hands-on health education, preventive care. The clinic members will talk about blood pressure readings, basic vitals, and then how to bridge the gap between medical terminology and something that people can actually understand. So there'll be plenty of time for Q&A. We definitely want to make it an interactive session. And yeah, we have many more events this year. We'll have one event per month, so 12 events total. And beyond just attending the events, we have opportunities for further involvement. If you want some volunteering experience, we have several projects like tech, content, program management that I think would also be helpful in professional development if anyone is interested in that. So again, thank you so much to ICC for letting me speak today. Thank you so much for the panelists. And I hope everyone has a happy weekend.
Thank you so much, Prachi. We really appreciate you telling us about CWC Youth Program. I'm going to request Rashri Srirangarajan to now talk about the ICC West Valley Youth Initiative that she's involved with.
Thank you. I joined as the ICC board member early last year with a collective vision of broadening our scope of service to our West Valley community. And the overwhelming feedback from the community was that feelings of isolation and stress among the youth has heightened due to this pandemic. And so this prompted us to drive a program dedicated for youth. So what is this youth forum? The Youth Forum provides a safe platform for youth and young adults to have conversations regarding social and emotional health and associated topics. It allows them to have an open and honest discussion with one another. And the sole purpose of this forum is to build that peer-to-peer relationship in a safe, supportive, and non-competitive environment. It is driven by youth to support youth emotionally and also help youth understand more about their roots and culture, and also to have a better rapport when communicating with parents and elders and help them understand the challenges they face. So it's kind of a learning platform for both the parents and the youth here. In addition to that, to build the courage to talk about issues considered taboo in our culture, in our society, and also, last but not the least, is to give back to the society in their own way. So here I have Keishita, one of our youth ambassadors. Keishita, can you show your face? Yes. So she's our youth ambassador who's been very passionate about this cause. And two other things I would like to add is this forum is, although run by youth, is guided by and mentored by a specialist, a psychiatrist, Dr. Shyamala Kanchan. And one of the things that I would like to emphasize is, although what is shared here by these youths is not considered any professional, as a professional opinion, but their experiences and stories speak volumes. So I would like to invite those of you who are interested in joining this and sharing their social emotional journey with the group, and to create that conversation and to support one another. I would like to bring Keishita here to say a few words about her role, her experiences. Take it away.
Thank you for that introduction. So as Arshiyanti mentioned, our group is the ICC Social Emotional Health Youth Group, and it's meant to be a safe space for young adults to have important conversations regarding their social emotional health and similar topics in a way that allows kids to be completely open and honest with each other without worrying about the consequences. And so our goal is to build a sense of community, but also be a support system for each other that can ultimately make a difference in our society. So my role in this group is to organize and facilitate discussion while making sure to involve the strengths of each member of our panel so that everyone is involved and everyone feels like they get to do something. And our end game is not only to increase, the number of panelists, but also to open up to as many people as possible so that they have a place to come listen and also be heard. For me personally, oftentimes, I have to deal with social anxiety a lot. But ever since I've been a part of this group, it's become so much easier for me to share my thoughts and feelings with other people. And I genuinely feel like what I'm saying is heard and people care. And that's the type of community we're trying to build. So if this is something you're interested in, please join us. We'd love to have you.
Thank you, Keishita. Well put.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. I think that concludes our webinar today.